from Daytona International Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to The Dash as we get set to go racing for this 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. This evening from Daytona International Speedway, we do a little bit of last-second testing and tuning as preseason thunder gets underway with the season opener just around the corner. As always, we're happy to be with you, myself, Evan Pasoko, alongside with Randy Janet, the RaceSpotTV booth. Happy that you're tuning in on the iRacing Esports Network. Our director, Hugo Louise, is bringing us to you this evening. And Randy, we are just around the corner from our 100-lap opener here at Daytona. But tonight, we get a look at some of the new faces, and I think most importantly, one of the highlights tonight, some of the new cars that we're going to be looking at for 2019. First time we're seeing some of the new faces working together. Maybe drivers that had been teammates for a long time now split apart following last week's draft.
Yeah, and it's going to be crazy to watch how these guys work together, especially for 50 laps here at Daytona at a non-points event. It's going to be really fun to watch these guys work, and especially with a handful of non-drafted drivers in the field. How are those guys going to potentially shake this up as we go 50 laps around this 2.5-mile super speedway?
Drivers have been warming up here for the last 20 minutes or so, and we are drawing down until we get sent to go racing tonight. As you mentioned, 50 laps the distance, 125 miles start to finish in this dash. You can see that pack of cars out there on the racetrack right now getting warmed up. And to stick with the theme per se of a little bit of preseason testing, we're also testing out some new features on the iRacing service in relation to the paint schemes. So don't be alarmed if you do see some of the cars on track without visible numbers on the side. All of this is basically a lot of R&D for the iRacing folks to try to figure out what they're going to be able to do with these cars. So the one thing that you are going to notice is, well, all of the iconic paint schemes, the team paint schemes, say like a Garrett Lowe or the number 21 machine of a Ray Alfalla, they're going to be driving their team paint schemes and those team custom number fonts tonight. So that is one thing that is new, and those are the cars that they're going to be driving this season. Of course, some of the cars that you don't see paint schemes on, that is going to be different when we go racing in just about a week's time here. But this is a good opportunity for drivers to kind of get reacclimated with things. There is a patch coming to the iRacing service tomorrow, so something tells me there will be some more practice going on between now and the green in the Daytona 250. But it is always fun to get an extra week of action in here before it really starts to get serious, especially this year when you're talking about a $110,000 prize pool.
Yep, you need to warm up as much as you can for that, but of course the entire championship not going to be run here at Daytona, but it's also a good warm-up for us, like you said. I mean, get assimilated with these new teams, these new colors, and all the new faces as we get our warm-up timer counting down to 0, and we get ready to grid. The 34 cars in attendance, send them out there for 50 laps around this infamous racetrack here in the eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series preseason race.
And with that, the warm-up session for this evening has drawn to a close, and the cars are going to be headed to the grid here momentarily, so we will go and take a look at your RaceSpotTV starting grid. Pole position for this one going to belong to the number 16. That is Chris Overland, who starts from pole position, driving for Wood Brothers Racing, selected by them in last week's draft. Another driver is up on row number 2. That is Garrett Lowe with the Renegades. On row number 2, Keegan Leahy going to start this one in third position for G2 Esports. Taylor Hurst rolling from 4th spot, and it is Brandon Cattell who rounds out your top 5.
Chris Shearburn is going to be rolling off 6th with Jimmy Mullis behind the wheel of that Richmond Raceway Toyota Camry in 7th. Eric Smith in 8th with Phil Diaz in 9th, and in 10th spot, the Renegades car, number 27 of Corey Vincent.
Zach Novak did do a start to number 11 spot. That's the Roush Fedway Racing entry. Jake Nichols to his right-hand side in 12th for JGR. Benjamin Nelson gets the number 13 starting spot tonight. Clint Boyer Racing's Casey Kerwin will start in 14th, and Christian Challoner rounds out the top 15.
Ashton Crowder will find himself in 16th with Casey Tucker 17th. Ray Alfalla, defending series champion, behind the wheel of that famous Wood Brothers number 21. He will roll off from P18. Dylan Duvall in 19th, and Cody Bias will round out your top 20.
Adam Benefield is going to start this one in 21st position. Michael Conti in 22nd. Out of the Junior Motorsports camp, you look back on the row number 12. It is Nick Ottinger 23rd, Brad Davies in 24th, and Matt Busa rounds out your top 25.
last handful of cars on your grid. Logan Kress in 26th, Michael Guest 27th, Malik Ray also behind the wheel of that Richmond Raceway number 90, Sunoco on the hood and the primary color scheme of that car in 28th, Blake Reynolds 29th, Nick Shelton in 30th, and then Kane Cook, Nathan Lyon, Ryan Lowe, and Michael Garuglia will round out the 34 cars we have set to give us some action tonight.
It is a look top to bottom at your RaceSpotTV starting grid. So again, the real action is going to kick off right here on the high banks of Daytona. That is next week. February the 12th is when we kick off this 2019 campaign. All of the cars will be fully dressed at that point. But tonight, maybe a little bit of fun amongst some new friendly faces with the teammates, some new rivals, and of course, an annual tradition to get this thing kicked off. 50 laps on the board. We're happy that you're tuning in with us on RaceSpotTV at the iRacing Esports Network. Pace car added in. The field is going to be in the hands of Chris Overland. Green flag in the air as we go dash racing from Daytona.
Chris wastes no time picking up that throttle, and we see immediately when the pace car came in, he was in there. Look at the amount of cars we see leaving the top groove. Not a great start if you're starting on that outside in Renegades. Already getting left out to dry. That's going to be Garrett Lowe, who goes from the outside of that front row. He's going to fall like a stone back to around the 46 of Jimmy Mullis. Not going to quite be able to get that car cut down and in. So not a great start to this preseason action for that number 28 car.
He does have some support coming up on the outside of the racetrack, but not sure it's necessarily going to get there in time. And now you do see tucking up on the back bumper of that number 28 machine. So a little bit of help for Garrett Lowe, but no surprise. Inside the place to be, it is a 5-car breakaway at the completion of lap number 1, with the advantages to the inside of the racetrack. And now that that support is there, you go on board with Chris Shearburn. He's going to give a shove to the 28, jumping up in front of him on the outside of the racetrack, trying to make some noise as well is going to be Cattell. At a 16 goes up, shuts that outside line down. Here comes all the way to the inside, Keegan Leahy now.
That may have been a mistake there from the 16 of Chris Overland, because while he shut down the upper groove, he gave a wide opening to the 62 of Keegan Leahy, who's going to take this race lead. So for Chris Overland, trying to be aggressive, trying to shut down that top line, does not work out, and he finds himself in second spot. Can he get a good run off the top here, off of 4? He actually has momentum, but he doesn't have any help from that 80 of Brandon Cattell on that outside. So it's going to be Keegan Leahy who leads lap number 3.
A good job for Leahy to just kind of mind his own business, hold the bottom. He was the big reason why Overland got such a good jump by pushing him on the inside. And once the 16 went up and to defend, it opened up the door. And now Leahy is going to have the push for the race lead from Taylor Hurst, who sits in second position. Hurst, that all-black Chevrolet Camaro, second in line on the inside as we work down the back straightaway. 207 miles an hour that time into turn number 3. You can see the sun kind of going in and out of the clouds here. Is a little bit darker down in 3 and 4 now as we come off of the corner inside the better lane by 3.
That's going to be really something to watch as well over the course of this championship. Of course, the dynamic weather coming in. We've seen the dynamic track states, and the weather would always change a little bit in some of the sessions, but now with the sun dipping in and out, it's really going to affect these track temps, as Taylor Hurst is going to throw his bid to the outside to run with Keegan Leahy for this race lead. Keegan led that last lap by 700ths of a second, but Taylor getting a nice push from behind by Jimmy Mullis. He's going to just get about clear going into 3. Is he going to take it and chop the nose? Yes, he will. Move that 74 car up to the point.
So Hurst goes into the number 1 position, and at 46, Machida Jimmy Mullis, who pushed him there, is going to want some help, and he's not even going to get a shot at going back to the lead for his own, because immediately back up top goes Keegan Leahy. So he wants to challenge him right back. Hurst does lead, that time at the stripe, but the pink and white car on the outside, that is Keegan Leahy. He is now being pushed by the 46 Machida Jimmy Mullis. Behind them, the 16 Chris Overland, your pole sitter, P5 the last time by, are the first 3 cars in line on the outside of the racetrack. But you look down and on the bottom, I think it's about a 6 or 7 car line of privateer race car drivers that were not selected in the draft, competing this year as free agents, all on the inside line.
We talk about the team cars right now on the outside, second and third in line up top. There are a couple of team cars, but they're not running under the same banner. The first group that we have that are running together under the same stable are going to be coming from Team Renegades. That's going to be Corey Vincent as well as Garrett Lowe. On the outside, they're already lined up line of stern. You see that 16 actually, Chris Overland. He's going to go to the back, and I see a big opening, and I see a number 21 Motorcraft car there waiting in the background. So Chris likely trying to get back to his Wood Brothers teammate of Ray Alfala, and he's going to get there. But right now, the group that's up near the front that's working together are Lowe and Vincent with Team Renegades.
Well, you just made the point that we didn't see any teammates working together, and a little bit of off speed there for the 16, so Alfala's going to have to ease him into this draft, and it kind of scrunches up those cars behind him, but they will get hooked up, and now we'll get a first opportunity to see what the Wood Brothers racing cars are able to do with one another. A couple of cars filled that big void. You see that light blue car in front now as the 16 drops further back, and Overland is going to go way to the back of this after trying to work with Ray Alfala. He wants to drop out. Maybe not liking the 2-3 watt action that we're seeing early, just 7 laps into this race. But the cars that took advantage of that really gained from that. The 80 machine right in the middle of the pack there jumped up, or I should say the 90 Malik Ray jumped up. He's now working with help from Michael Gass. So those cars went to the middle line of the racetrack, but certainly mid-pack not where you want to be. Overland wasn't able to make it work, and you can see the look out of the front, double file all the way to the front. We have a battle for the race lead. The 46 and Mullis, first time he's really gotten a shot at the point. He was third at the start-finish line, but is within striking distance if you can get some help there from Mullis on the bumper.
Yeah, Eric Smith in that second spot, still doing a good job holding on here, but Mullis wanting to get pushed to the front. You can tell he's not particularly patient right now, and he wants Brandon Cattell to get right up behind him and just shove that Richmond Racing Toyota Camry right out in front of this field. You see some bobbing and weaving. I saw one car, I think, maybe dip a couple tires underneath the yellow line, turning into turn 3. So maybe a little bobbing and weaving and knocking the rust off for some of these drivers. Maybe haven't raced as much through the winter and through the holidays, of course, but now the 46 of Jimmy Mullis going to try to work his way back up front, but still no help coming from Cattell behind. And those Renegades cars are getting bigger and bigger in the rearview mirrors. They're currently third and fourth in line up top.
It's good news for those drivers. Trying to line them up and make some noise out of this thing as the 28 and the 27 do work with one another. Could possibly see drivers break off. And, we talk about the advantages of working with teams, and certainly a lot of communication is going to be going back and forth. One of the points that we made sure to kind of discuss when we were predicting through the draft last week who teams would take is it wouldn't hurt for a team to select somebody in the second round or for their second pick that had a little bit of chemistry with their first pick. Certainly Wood Brothers did a good job at getting Alfala and Overland together. If there is a single racetrack, though, I guess I should say two, that Talladega is on the calendar again this year, where teams can really help each other out. It is these big plate tracks, but this is not the drafting package of 6-7 years ago. You can't just get two cars together and take off. You do need more than just one friend.
Yeah, that's one of the big things. You do need some more friends. And, of course, for a lot of these guys, they've been running in this championship for a few years. So, in some ways, just like in the Monster Energy Cup Series, it's going to be a very similar situation. Drivers will have people that they've worked well with before on track and, like and probably have some friendships there. And maybe even some others that don't like and don't get along too well that you'll see maybe those drivers avoid like the plague. So, the sort of friendships and politics, especially on these big plate tracks, are always going to be bound, even between the teammates and between the not teammates.
10 laps now complete from Daytona, already a fifth of the way through this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series preseason dash.
Oh, we got
so
cars
far
around.
Incident free, and there it is.
The first incident of the night, see a black car spinning down on the inside. Chris Overland involved. We saw him try to play it safe and drop to the back. That didn't work. Dylan Duvall involved, as well as Malik Ray.
I'll take sole responsibility for bringing that up. And just as they say, 10 laps in, we've got a problem. It started with the 88 machine of Brad Davies. Junior Motorsports Chevrolet, second pick for them in the entry draft. You'll see the contact right there. A little bit of miscommunication between he and Ray Alfala. And when the 88 got turned around in front of the field, you can see chaos ensues. Racetrack was completely blocked up on the outside. Looked like Alfala came down, tagged, and hooked what was Nick Ottinger, that black car, hard up and into the outside wall, and it created quite a big mess at a turn 2 for the first caution flag of the night.
And for all those drivers, you know they're going to be really, really frustrated, Evan, because if you were running in that part of the pack, I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb and say you were running a strategy of pretty much, I want to stay behind the drama. I just want to wait for cars in front of me to get into trouble, basically just slam on the brakes and should be able to easily avoid it. But that's the part of the racetrack where you think you're going to be safe because drivers aren't going to be getting aggressive for any little bit of track position that they can pick up. That normally will happen up at the front as drivers really fight for the race lead. So if you were running in the back of the pack and just got caught up in someone else's problem that they were fighting deep in position for some reason, you're not going to be too happy of a camper, I think.
No, not the way you want to start. At the end of the day, it is a test, and these drivers are playing around with some things, trying to experiment a little bit, as is iRacing, as you mentioned, with the different numbers, the paint schemes and whatnot, that'll all be polished up by next week. But certainly, you want to do good, and you want to get everything you can out of these 50-lap run here. Race cars down to the pit lane. First time this evening, again, 50-lap distance. Not going to be able to go all the way without coming down for service, so everybody in this time.
Everyone except Nathan Lyon, actually. Nathan Lyon's staying out, and he's got some big damage, so I think he'll likely come down sooner rather than later. But everyone in the pits for the first time. I see just 2 tires, 2 left sides only for Garrett Lowe. He's probably going to pick up some spots here.
Certainly would be good if you could just get in and out. Taylor Hurst way off and out. It looks like Nathan Lyon, as you see the rest of the cars blend back out onto the racetrack, did not come down to the pit lane at all. The driver of the number 4, of course, number 4 isn't on the side of his Chevrolet Camaro ZL1, but he is going to become your race leader. Might pit the next time by, but the race off of the pit lane, you see it there. Hurst, Mullis, Cattell, Shearburn, and Smith. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 off of pit road. Going to blend in to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on track with Lyon, who started this race on the random grid. Again, there was no qualifying. It was just a 25-minute practice before we took to the green flag. So random grid put Nathan Lyon back in 32nd position, and maybe in hopes of getting a little bit of experience towards the front of the field, he stays out here. And not necessarily a huge gamble. The rest of the field might like to stretch the field that they just got to the end of this race. They'd have to go about 38 laps or so. So Lyon will absolutely have to pit. If everybody else does, no harm, no foul. But it is a big gain for the 4. And even if you can't make it to the end and you got to pit, I think more valuable experience being up here than trailing at the very back.
Yeah, that is definitely true. We'll have to see what Nathan does, though, because getting caught up in the incidents, I think whether or not he's getting experience, I think he probably has to come down pit road and at least have that car looked at, because that front end is pretty decently crumpled. He was part of that incident, but seems like he has no intention of coming down pit road. So we'll see what happens for this 4 car of Nathan Lyon. Might have some considerable damage when we eventually get this thing wound back up and get up to top speed, as you see the cars getting into that outside line, getting ready for this restart here in just 1 more lap's time. How will this impact Nathan? For the initial run down in towards turn 1 and through turn 2, maybe won't be too bad. I guarantee you, once we hit that super stretch, we're probably going to see that 4 car start falling back and really holding up that inside line.
So doubled up and getting set to go back green. Running order, of course, nobody across the top of your screen, but just to kind of reset things here for you, Nathan Lyon is going to bring us to the green flag, and Taylor Hurst to the outside of the front row in second. Jimmy Mullis is third. Brandon Cattell is in fourth. You got Shearburn and Smith sharing row 3. They're 5 and 6, and then Garrett Lowe and Michael Conti round out through P7 and 8. For the race start, we'll have 14 laps down, 36 to go. A lot of time still left on the board.
Yeah, a lot of time indeed. And I think actually, somewhat interestingly, I think the only driver we have who's still in this race and the champion of the series is actually that 8 car from Junior Motorsports and Michael Conti. So we'll see what he can do. Drew a short straw on the randomized grid, rolled off 22nd of 34. He's done well to get himself up into this top 8.
It looks like a total of 31 cars on the lead lap, although I don't see Dylan Duvall out there at the moment. He scored 31st, but Ray Fallon, Nick Ottinger, Malik Ray all involved in the accident. All those drivers on the pit lane trying to get some repairs. Looks like Duvall may also have parked his car, so 4 drivers early take it out of this one, but we are going to get set for the first restart, and real no advantage to be in the control car trying to jump, so expect everybody to get up to speed together as the pace car goes down and in at 80 miles an hour. A little bit of a jump there as Nathan Lyon wants to get out and get going, but he goes a big gap atop Jimmy Mullis. He's going to have no drafting help down into turn 1. Watch to see if he tries to block Hurst on the outside. If not, that outside line's going to have a ton of speed now in turn 1.
Here comes that arrow really hurting Nathan Lyon, like I was talking about. The outside groove of Taylor Hurst. Big head of steam. You see the checkup inside. We have 2 or 3 different incidents coming from down low. Big caution. That's about half the field.
It all started, there was a checkup towards the front of the field, and it only got worse from there. The 8 was kind of the car in the middle of it all. Michael Conti was getting bounced around in the checkup, and it was the 28 behind him who gets hooked right there. Up and in front of traffic goes Garrett Lowe. That was basically the entire inside line building up speed. They caught Lyon, then had to slow down. They all started running into the back of each other, and it is the 28 of Lowe who's the unlucky one. Gets turned off of the nose of Benjamin Nelson, goes up into traffic, and very similar to the last incident we saw, turn 2 becomes a parking lot.
This is sort of, I think, the whole thing caused, Evan, by one of the, common thread that we saw a couple times last season of drivers staying out who either didn't have good pace or on old tires. We would inevitably see some big pileup, and we just saw the same thing from Nathan Lyon. Had absolutely no top end due to all his aero damage. There's no way he's going to be able to keep that number 4 car stuck out there. I think we're only likely to just see the same thing happen again when we eventually go back to green flag racing. So I'm hoping that 4 car at least comes down and gets repaired. Otherwise, this is going to be a long middle section of this race.
We'll see if that decision does come for the Lyon camp. Again, he is going to have to pit at some point to get fuel to go 50 laps in this dash. Of course, I guess if you get enough yellows, you'd be able to go either way. Visit RaceSpot.tv/timing. You can keep an eye on the live timing for this race, but maybe the next yellow or so is when I would expect that driver to come down to the pit lane. Don't want to wreck out of the race. We made that point very clear. Sure, there's a lot less on the line, but I think you'd rather run up front for 20 laps and, get involved in an accident at the end of the day than maybe run back in 30th and don't get any drafting practice. But Lyon is going to come down to the pit lane. He's not the only driver. You see almost a third of the field maybe come down more towards the back because it's not going to make that much of a difference for them. The teams are practicing. You've got old alliances maybe practicing with one another through this offseason and into next week's season opener, but you are never going to get all 40 cars on the track together, so it's certainly valuable track time.
Definitely is. Like you said, there's with all the teams going to be working on their own setups and their own strategy as far as that goes, you're only ever going to get maybe a handful of cars on track at once. Maybe you can get some sort of official race, but it honestly might come from one of the regular iRacing fixed races where you can run with a lot of these guys. But beyond that, in terms of getting these guys and these setups out here, and I wouldn't be surprised, by the way, if some of these teams are running maybe a slightly slower setup than what we'll end up seeing come next Tuesday. You're never going to get this sort of experience, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. You never necessarily want to show your whole hand, which is kind of the fun cat and mouse part of things. And, at most racetracks, drivers don't necessarily need to practice in big groups like this. You talk about this season rolls on to the second week at Las Vegas. Testing with 5 cars certainly different than being out there with all 40. However, going to spread things out a little bit more. I would expect at that point you can kind of use your full setup whenever you're practicing. I did mention under the last yellow, and when we pace with the lights on top of the iRacing.com pace car, good is time to mention as an Ian. Talladega on the calendar this year. It's a point that we also made during the draft last week that Talladega returns to the calendar for the first time in about 6 years or so. Daytona on February the 12th and Talladega on April the 23rd. So for the first time in a long while, 2 plate tracks make up the calendar that sees 18 races total this season.
And that's really, really big because we saw last season, Evan, some of your top guys, they had to take their mulligan early in the season with a bad finish here at Daytona, and some drivers, they had sort of a championship-defining race at the season opener here at Daytona. Talladega has the same exact potential. Some guys were fighting for championships with only maybe a single drop week at hand. If you had to use it at Daytona, a bad race at Talladega could sort of be an early nail in the coffin for your championship, or even at the same time could boost someone's championship with a nice big win at one of those plate tracks. So always a big curveball for the guys, even just having one at the beginning of the season, throwing the second one in there about midway through. That's going to be a lot of fun, and I think a lot of drama for everyone involved.
You see the look at the first half of the calendar there. Sonoma, obviously a fun one in the mix. your more conventional tracks, Vegas, Fontana, Texas, and whatnot. And then you kind of flip to the second half of the calendar, which is where things get fun. And, of course, where the playoffs will be for the final handful of races on the season. You see also Michigan, Bristol, and then there's the cut. So the opening round, you do have Darlington in the playoffs, Indianapolis, and the Charlotte Roval will make its debut in this eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing series later this year, September the 24th. It's going to be a crazy enough race as is. Love that track. Would love to certainly see maybe more of the intermediate racetracks incorporate a Roval into an option. But the fact that it is the second to last race on the season, and therefore the race that pretty much determines the championship field, is that much more exciting.
And even talking about those final 4 races, you don't have a single cookie cutter track, 1.5 mile regular track in that list of it. I think that might be the first time that has happened in a while. I mean, yeah, you go to the Charlotte Roval, but obviously the Roval much different than the Oval. You have Homestead, which is really the only sort of, let's say, normal-ish track that pops up in that lineup. All the rest, very, very different in terms of what they throw at you with Indianapolis and Darlington. And then, of course, the road course. So that's a crazy final 4 races that you have to throw at these guys.
The 2 quick back-to-back cautions have slowed the pace in this dash. Good news is lights out on top of the iRacing.com official pace car. So going to be due up for a restart with the front row that sees Taylor Hurst inside of Brandon Cattell. Second row, Mullis and Shearburn in third and fourth position. And, 19 laps into a race, you think we're pretty early on. Only going to be 5 laps away from halfway. Going to be due come and take this green flag again. Only 50 laps in this preseason dash. Main event next week, Tuesday night, 9 Eastern start right here, RaceSpotTV and the iRacing Sports Network. Certainly the race that you are not going to want to miss, but appreciate all of you tuning in as well for our last major and really only major test, to be fair, before we officially go racing in this 2019 campaign. As you saw a quick peek at the number 27 of Corey Vincent, one of the new teams, the Renegades entry. Quite a bit of damage on that car, and to his inside, Brad Davies, not much worse for wear. You see the 5 of Matt Busa, Williams Esports driver. He also is working with some pretty big damage. So no fast repairs. Those drivers are going to have to try to get those cars fixed up as this night carries on. But a race start due up now. First time the number 74 of Taylor Hurst is going to be in control of the field. Started fourth, and he'll lead lap number 19 as we go back green.
Good restart thus far. A little bit slow on the outside. And you see one driver, third in line, Jimmy Mullis. Actually, no, I take that back. That was Brandon Cattell trying to get down into that bottom groove and ended up actually deciding out of it and nearly caused, I think, a big of a stack up that did cause a big checkup in both lines. And we're going to see a big sort of accordion effect when these fields start to close, when this field starts to close back up in just a moment. As you see Cattell getting a push from behind by the driver of Chris Shearburn as the field comes back side by side as they head into 3.
We try to help you out as much as we can there. The blue car outside, that is Brandon Cattell. Red car behind him is Chris Shearburn. And then the rest of the cars in line, Jimmy Mullis being pushed by the all-black machine. That is Eric Smith. And, of course, the Michael Conti there. What a move down to the inside of the racetrack. That was Keegan Leahy in the pink and white car. Transitioned low as he tried to get around Shearburn, clearly wanting to get to the bottom of the racetrack off of the restart. Same thing there. Another gutsy move, that time from Cattell, as everybody abandons the outside.
And an asteroid basically hits that outer line because it's kind of extinct, and then everyone thinks about jumping back up and in there. That's something that doesn't make much sense to me if you're Cattell, to be so aggressive to try to get to the bottom and then start fanning back and forth on the outside groove like that. Seems pretty aggressive, especially we're not even halfway in this thing, and he's racing for what is essentially 6th on the racetrack like it's going for the win right now. I like to see the aggression at times, but this early into a plate race, maybe not so much.
And you're starting to see a significant less amount of cars on a racetrack. Still over 25, total number 27 cars scored on the lead lap. But I think that you see this main group here is about 18, 19 cars deep or so before we kind of get back into the range of those team cars we were talking about with damage. Looks like everybody from Michael Gass, that bright blue car kind of mid-pack down the back straightaway, everybody there on back with damage. So that kind of splits up the lead pack and everybody else. but almost everybody single file towards the front of the field. It looks like that it is only maybe Keegan Leahy on the outside right now, trying to use some side draft to stick with it because he's got no help in front of him and no support coming anytime soon.
Yeah, there's some bobbing and weaving coming in this inside groove, which is allowing him to actually keep relatively even up there. They aren't as formed up nicely as maybe they could be, which is hurting their speed just a little bit. But we talk about the team cars, Evan. Only cars that really don't have terminal damage this far are Jimmy Mullis and Michael Conti. The entire rest of this field that are, of course, clean and, you can pretty much say has the best chance of coming away with a win in this thing are all your free agents coming in here that we're going to have towards round one. We have a couple other team cars that don't have their paints yet. Keegan Leahy is one of them. He's still out there and strong, but he just sort of blended with everyone else at the moment. And you see that outside line starting to sort of form back up about 7th to 8th place on track.
Certainly Keegan Leahy teammates with Jarl Tien at G2 Esports, one of the professional esports teams in the fold this season. Going to be fun to see how they experience their first campaign. It is a first campaign for all of the NASCAR teams, certainly in an official role, but fun to see a mix of those racing teams and the esports teams coming into this. Outside line now has a little bit of life. To the outside of the racetrack is Cattell. He's got behind him Leahy, also Shearburn, all stacked up in a line. Also looks like on the bumper there, Casey Kerwin, maybe a Blake Reynolds also. So now that the outside's got some support, Michael Conti wants the play, jumps to the outside. It is Taylor Hurst at the line, but all the speed down to turn one, high side. They're going to lose a lot of that momentum into the corner, but they basically have to drive up 33 degrees of banking, or on the bottom of the racetrack you dive down and almost use it to your advantage a little bit. Speed's only dropping to 199 in the quarter, but as we head down the Daytona super stretch, first real challenge for the race lead Hurst has had since the restart, and it is the 8 car right there, gets even with him, but can't quite make the move yet.
What a perfect pounce there from the past series champion of Michael Conti, who actually Cattell is going to aggressively slot himself down third in line on that inside groove. So there goes all of Conti's drafting help. Cattell kind of left him out to dry a little bit, but now here comes Keegan Leahy in that number 62. Going to latch right onto the back of that number 8 car of Michael Conti. So through 1 and 2, they lose a couple car lengths, and of course through the tri-oval as well. But as they get a big run coming down the hill, they're going to get a big run and try to work something down the Daytona super stretch. Mullis thought about jumping outside. That door got shut as the 8 pulled alongside your race leader once again.
And 3 wide there with lap traffic dropping to the back. That is the heavily damaged Renegades entry of Garrett Lowe, who was involved in an accident earlier. You look out of the back end, it looks like there, of Keegan Leahy up at the outside of the racetrack. The driver who's not really committing to either line is Phil Diaz, that Ford Fusion, kind of in the middle of the inside and the outside. Right now he tucks up behind Leahy 62. You're on board with him now, wanting to probably go with the outside line if they have the speed, but you see the 8 kind of lose that bite into the corner, so he can revert back down to the inside, take that safe lane, and next time the outside's got some momentum, I'm sure he'll try it, but Phil Diaz not willing to commit quite yet as he tucks back down on the inside, currently scored in P5.
I think right now it's just Keegan and Michael that seem committed to that outer groove. Cattell's going to jump back up, but we've already seen him be a bit of a flaky dancing partner as it's been. A couple times he sort of bounced in and out of that line, helped drivers push up, and then hung them out to dry. So it'll be interesting to see that blue car third in line on that inside line. Who's going to really stick with him and push him forward if that ends up becoming a situation later in this race, as Leahy and Conti basically falling to the tail end of your top 10.
And now working lap number 28 to 50, past halfway in the dash. Let's take a quick opportunity to look top to bottom at your iRacing midway race break, brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game with professionally organized racing from NASCAR and many more. Lap number 28, your race leader is Taylor Hurst. He leads the top. Jimmy Mullis, who's in the number 2 position. Looks like it is now Michael Conti scored third, with Phil Diaz fourth and Eric Smith to round out your top 5 as the scoring updates at the start-finish line. Looks like Smith is now going to drop the P6. Keegan Leahy is 7th position. Christian Challoner is in 8th. Chris Shearburn's 9th. And Nick Shelton rounds out your top 10.
11th spot, we have Adam Benefield, Casey Kerwin in 12th, Blake Reynolds in 13th, with Benjamin Nelson in 14th and Casey Tucker rounding out your top 15. That is the lead pack, by the way. The next group led by Chris Overland, 5 seconds down the road in 16th, Michael Garuglia in 17th, Nathan Lyon 18th, Michael Guest 19th, and Matt Busa also in that pack in 20th.
And then you take another 5-second jump back to find 21st place runner Logan Kress. Kane Cook runs in 22nd position. Ashton Crowder is 23rd. Corey Vincent is 24th. And then Brad Davies, Cody Bias, 25th and 26th. They're half a lap behind. Two drivers with some significant damage. Then you look to the cars laps down. Jake Nichols is still out there. 2 laps down in 27th. Garrett Lowe, 28th spot. Ryan Lowe, 29th. And Zach Novak rounds out your top 30. The rest of these cars out of the race. It includes Nick Ottinger, 31st. Dylan Duvall, 32nd. Ray Alfala, 33rd. And Malik Ray in 34th position. That's been a look at your iRacing Midway Race Break. For more information on the wide variety of sim racing possibilities online, you can visit iRacing.com to sign up today. And the jockeying to the inside of the outside, not slowing down. 2 drivers left up on the outside of the racetrack. You'll have a lap or 2 where almost everybody jumps up top and it pretty much evaporates as quickly as it formed. We'll see how long it takes for somebody else to commit. Is maybe thinking about going high as Leahy. If he didn't want to commit, he's got to. Phil Diaz fills the gap down low. Now we'll see what the 62 can do on the outside. He's hoping, I think, that Cattell can get to the bumper quickly.
Look at the experience that we're seeing from these guys that were championship contenders last year. We saw Conti and Leahy basically go to the midpoint of this little pack, and then in the span of us doing that quick mid-race break and update for all the running positions, they've gotten themselves back 3rd and 4th in line. So some aggressive passing happening just in that couple laps where we got that covered as Michael finds himself running 3rd. He thought about hopping up in front of Keegan, but that door shut on him as well. Now he's just going to sit there 3rd in line as we are inside of 20 laps to go.
Inside of 20 to go. Maybe things going to start to ramp up a little bit here as these drivers get closer and closer to the end. Does this win get you any closer to the $110,000 that are on the line this year? No, but it doesn't hurt to have the bragging rights for an extra 6 days before the season certainly gets off and gets going. We did see maybe earlier Overland trying to get with Alfala, but other than that, a surprise that we haven't seen any of the team cars maybe sacrifice track position to get with one another. Certainly wouldn't at all be surprised if we saw more of that. In fact, I would have been expecting more of that, but it's like drivers just trying to work it in the draft. Because the draft is something that is constantly evolving on the iRacing service. I mentioned there is going to be a patch tomorrow to just make some updates to the service. Of course, we do see big updates to the iRacing service a handful of times a year. The next one going to be due up in March, so these cars probably going to drive very different on a plate track the next time we come around to Talladega later this year. So that's why this test time, even for the best of the best, is ever so critical. Learning a lot now as they drive out there together inside line. 4 car lengths to the good. It is Hurst, Mullis, Conti, and Diaz. 1, 2, 3, 4.
They're all pretty much just working kind of single file. Those top guys, they're pretty much just cruising. We've not seen Jimmy Mullis jump up in a while, try to pick up the draft from any of those guys behind him on that upper groove. And I think that's what we're going to see pretty much to the end of this race, I think, from this front pack, Evan, because really there's only 15 cars in this group as you're running a 50-lap race. We're approaching 10 to go. I think everyone pretty much might have to make a pit stop. I'm not actually sure. We came down on lap 19. Might just be able to actually should be okay in terms of fuel. So things will be a little bit tight for these guys maybe, but I think up until about 10 to go, you're going to play a little bit of a patient game for now.
On the back half-ish of the field came down on that lap number 19 caution flag. We did see everybody pit a little bit earlier than that. First yellow, that was about 15 laps into this thing. So those drivers having to stretch it a little bit longer than everybody else. Of course, if you're not race leader Taylor Hurst, you can save a little bit. Not sure where that line is drawn, but maybe the drivers who did decide to come in and top off on our second of back-to-back yellows, maybe the ones who have played the strategy right in this one. Outside now, going to try to challenge those lead 4 cars. It is Leahy, trailed by, looks like that is Eric Smith there as well. Up on the outside of the racetrack, the all-black Chevrolet. Inside of him, the gray Chevrolet you see is Christian Challoner. We mentioned Cattell is in the blue. Nick Shelton in the lime green. As These drivers still not yet with finalized paint schemes for this 2019 campaign. So just try to help you keep an eye on where everybody else is. That run on the outside, though, died off pretty quickly.
Yeah, it really has. Like you said, with the paint schemes, not the greatest situation for us here in this little bit of preseason thunder to follow that sort of one car, two car, red car, blue car, just trying to follow and keep track of everyone. As Keegan Leahy's starting to get some momentum up top. He's pulled just shortly ahead of Michael Conti. Actually, take that back, falling back a little bit now after that upper groove kind of dies off on him. Once again, we've seen Keegan a couple times really fall victim of that, Evan. He sort of gets up there and starts getting near the front, and then the people he had pushing on him just essentially hit that eject button, and he pretty much just has to fall back in line.
It's all you can do. Once you lose the support, you're just going to either drop to the back or tuck down in line, and that's why having teammates certainly helps you. But Jimmy Mullis right now pushing Taylor Hurst up at the front of the field. Jimmy Mullis, you see the number 46 machine. Really no incentive to be best buddies with Hurst, but if Hurst is leading this race, there's a good chance that the 46 and Jimmy Mullis is going to be in second position. All of those little alliances that you have to keep up. Right now, we're going to take 13 laps to go. Too early, I think, to throw those up.
Oh, cars around at the tail end of this pack.
It gets questionable.
A couple cars down in the grass from this little pack. Chris Shearburn and Casey Tucker.
Tucker's on his lid, up and over, no caution as those cars were down and off of the racing surface. Replay right there. Looked like Tucker actually pushed up into Shearburn. That is a huge hit to the inside for Casey Tucker, who right into the concrete wall is going to end up on his lid. His night is done just like that. As you see the contact right here, that car up and over, and just like that, his dash is done with. Chris Shearburn was able to recover, though. He's actually still out there and on the racetrack, going down the back straightaway. The rest of the pack is going to pass him when they do catch up as they work around another pack of lap traffic on the outside, squeezing 3 wide. But we are still green now, 4 wide with another lap car on the outside.
Very, very brave, and everyone just fans out, jockeying for position. That's going to hurt everyone's momentum, and that's going to allow Keegan Leahy to pull up nearly second in line, nearly fighting side by side with Taylor Hurst. Michael Conti goes to the rear bumper of Keegan Leahy as well, and who's that? Eric J. Smith is going to be third in line up top as they start getting themselves formed out. Cattell is also going to hop up to that outside groove and then immediately come back to the bottom, so needing to decide what he wants to do, whether that's going to be 3 cars up high or if it's going to be 4, as there's still a little bit fanned out. Cattell needs to push Smith a little bit forward until he gets to the rear end of Conti. It looks like Cattell is somewhat committed to that outside groove as everyone gets formed up quickly. A little bit of craziness, but we sort of end up in the same order we were running in after working down that back straightaway.
And Leahy's also been one of the more committed drivers up on the outside of the racetrack. Taylor Hurst has really gone unchallenged. Michael Conti got nose-to-nose with him once in turn 3, but other than that, and speaking of Mike Conti, you go on board with the driver of the number 8 Chevrolet. He is the one pushing Keegan Leahy at a turn number 4. Turn mounted their first real challenge in a battle for the race lead here, is still kind of playing flip-flop back in the pack. Cattell thought about going high, stays low. At some point, we go 3 wide. Does the 46 of Jimmy Mullis remain loyal forever? Because if he were, say, to jump to the outside, jump up in front of a big run for the cars to the outside line, not only does he get a big push, but then there's a gap there. There's nobody pushing Taylor Hurst till you get back to third-placed car in line, Jimmy Mullis. So if that were to happen, it would be a great opportunity for the 46 machine to be able to go to the outside, have Phil Diaz catch up with Hurst, and he go to the race lead. Of course, you're not going to get any favors. So how long are you loyal? We're inside of 10 laps to go in the dash, and Taylor Hurst still leads.
Yeah, we're pretty much still single file. It's just Conti and Leahy on that outside groove, and they've pretty much gotten dropped well far back. They're likely now at this point have to sort of stay out there. I don't think there's enough time for them to fall to the tail end of this sort of inside line and try to work their way back forward, although Conti, that's what he's going to do, is he immediately jumps down low, but I would not be surprised if he's going to try to catch the next wave of momentum that outside line hits. Cattell from fourth, he pokes out to the upper groove for a moment, but still is not really committing to it. It's just sort of like, is anyone going to come with me? Is anyone going to come with me? I'm going to still kind of show half a nose, but still not really going for it just yet. Now he's going to hop up out top, see if he can get anyone to follow his cause, and someone does, and he immediately drops back down low. I honestly think the way he's been going thus far, I don't think anyone's going to jump outside to help Cattell. I think if he wants to make that outer groove work, he's going to have to help someone else in doing so, as we get a couple of cars jumping up to that outside line.
And more cars go up and on the outside of the racetrack, and 3 wide again. Lap traffic on the outside. It is Eric J. Smith, the old black car now, giving the push to Phil Diaz on the outside line of the racetrack. But 2 cars you can kind of hang around. That's why we haven't seen that outside just completely evaporate. But Michael Conti, somebody who's been on the outside better part of this run, he has also driven down to the bottom of the racetrack. So drivers not willing to commit to those moves yet. And I promise you get to the last lap or two. Sometimes the concern is you get to within inside 4 laps to go or less, Randy. You don't want to make your move yet. You can lose a lot of ground if you make a move to the outside at 4 laps to go. Nobody goes with you. If you're talking about a big pack, you can go all the way to the back. In this case, the back of the lead group would be 11th position. So you can easily go P2 to P11. So it's too early maybe for some drivers to commit at 4 to go. But of course, 4 laps to go or less, caution flag would end the race. So you do have to strike a balance. Expect the drivers back half of this group get a little bit more itchy, maybe sooner than the cars in 3rd, 4th, and 5th. You feel like they're already in a pretty good spot and they don't want to ruin a good thing.
Yep, Cattell is still doing his bit of a dance of jumping outside and right back down low, so be interesting to see if he's going to get someone going with him or not. I think you're right, though. I think if your name is Hurst, Hurst is obviously going to have to defend on the outside, but if you're Mullis, maybe even Cattell or Challoner, you're probably going to be a little bit on the patient side and wait till one of those outside grooves get to you before you jump up top. Cattell's going to throw his car right back outside. No one's going to go there, and he's going to drop back down low as they work down the super stretch. But you're right, we're starting to see drivers. I see Leahy, I see Conti, I see another car toward the tail end of that line. I think it's Phil Diaz, as actually I think Conti maybe opted out of that line after initially jumping up there. So still jockeying back and forth. Are those drivers toward the tail end of this pack? 5 to go this time. Time to decide what you're going to do.
And you can see now a line coming up on the outside. Michael Conti pushed by Casey Kerwin. Keegan Leahy there also. Now jumping to the outside was Challoner there for a moment, and he drops back and in. So drivers still not yet willing to go, but certainly a lot of more movement inside and out. And listen, for Taylor Hurst, you got to be feeling all right. Okay, you've led now the most laps in this race, but you know it's coming, and there's very little you can do. It goes back to the age-old question: would you rather be the predator or the prey? All you can do is really throw one block, and either it works or probably both cars are going into the outside wall, and it is stacking up the field this time by 46 down, 4 laps to go in the dash. It is still Hurst atop Mullis and Cattell, as now 5 cars string out inside single file.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's really interesting to me the fact that upper line has just completely died off. I would think that with 4 laps to go, drivers would be jumping up there and trying to get that line working and get some momentum so you have a couple of laps. To be able to make it work, Mullis maybe makes a mistake. He puts a couple of wheels below that yellow line, was able to get it back in line. I was a little bit worried. Maybe might see him get bumper hooked trying to get back up and off the apron, but he was able to do so cleanly. So now, coming to 3 laps to go, what are these guys going to do in terms of setting up this outer line? Is it everyone just going to run single file? Orange and black car, jumps up top. That's Casey Kerwin. Will anyone go with him?
Cattell, probably one of the most consistent drivers here at Daytona, running 3rd right now. I think he's kind of the instigator here. He was pushing Mullis all the way down the back straightaway, pushed him into Taylor Hurst. That's what caused that little bit of a checkup last time. Watch here. He's not letting off at all. He is all over that bumper, down into turn 3, putting the pressure on. Maybe trying to convince the 46. Let's go to the outside. Let's make some noise here. But those movements towards the back half of this lead group have only hurt those cars. 2-3 cars isn't enough, and at 2 laps to go now, everybody's single file but 10th and 11th position. So you're going to wait for this to break out. It's got to come at any moment, with now a lap and a quarter to go, as you see the 46 of Mullis still in P2, waiting, and I'm sure patiently watching in the rear view mirror. It's our second to last time down the super stretch.
We have a couple of cars jumping up top. I see Michael Connie. I also see Christian Challenger, but Connie, he pulls the plug on it and goes back down low. You have to get the car outside right here, right now. You have to know that that outside push is not going to come from any of those cars in the top 4 or 5 spots. So if your name is Leahy, Connie, Challenger, Diaz, Kerwin, you need to be one of those drivers who takes the risk. White flag through the tri-oval. This time, last lap being thrown, and here they come. Cattell goes to the outside. We got 4 cars pushing from the outside to the front.
And the lead two are Cattell and Reynolds. Cattell the blue, the purple to Blake Reynolds. They had a big run. Look at this side draft. Door banging with Jimmy Mullis in turn number 2. The 46 can't get up. All he can do is push Taylor Hurst to turn 3. The top 2 cars trying to break away. Where does the move come from? There's the 46. They return to the outside wall for Brandon Cattell. Final time at a turn 4. Mullis sticks the nose high. He will get there, but not in time. Taylor Hurst wins the dash.
What a run for those guys. Almost a little bit anticlimactic with that upper line. Still drivers not committing on the white flag lap as hard as I thought they might. So Taylor Hurst, relatively unchallenged. Half of a tenth is the gap between himself and Jimmy Mullis, but that was pretty much the gap for the last 40 some odd laps. But a big win for those two. Know that there's some alliances there, and I know Richmond Racing will be happy to be really the first team with a driver with their paint scheme at least up toward the front of this field, coming home in second. Remember, they had a very, very good run here last season as well for the season opener. That entire group, when they had 5 or 6 cars, I think pretty much all of them were in the top 10.
It's certainly a good way for some of these drivers to get the season kicked off. 34 started it. 22 of them are able to finish this 50-lap dash on the lead lap. The driver on top of the mountain is Taylor Hurst in the number 74 machine as we take a look top to bottom at your RaceSpotTV full race results here tonight from Daytona Beach, Florida. It is Hurst with the win. The final margin of victory, 0.049 seconds. Back to Jimmy Mullis, the Richmond Raceway Esports driver in P2. Adam Benefield comes home in 3rd spot. Keegan Leahy is 4th for G2 Esports, and Blake Reynolds rounds out your top 5. Phil Diaz comes home P6. It's Junior Motorsports' Michael Conti in 7th. Brandon Cattell, after that contact in turn 3, ends up slotting to P8. Christian Challenger for JTG Doherty Racing in 9th, and Eric J. Smith rounds out your top 10.
Casey Kerwin will come home in the 11th spot. He'll be the last car that was part of that lead pack. Nicholas Shelton in 12th. Matt Busa in 13th. Benjamin Nelson in 14th. Nathan Lyon 15th. Chris Overland 16th. Michael Guest in 17th. Kane Cook 18th. Logan Kress 19th. And Michael Garuglia rounds out your top 20.
Continuing on through now into the tail end of the lead lap. In this one, it is the Renegades entry of Corey Vincent, who comes in 21st and 22nd for the Burton Kligerman Esports driver Ashton Crowder. Still in this race at the end of it, but laps down for Chris Shearburn, Junior Motorsports driver Brad Davies, and Cody Bias. And then everybody else out of this race that includes Garrett Lowe, Ryan Lowe, Casey Tucker, Jake Nichols, Zach Nichols from 26th through 30. And at the back, it is Nick Ottinger 31st, Dylan Duvall 32nd, Ray Alfala in 33rd, and Malik Ray in 34th position. That is a complete look top to bottom at your full race results tonight from Daytona International Speedway. Nice photo finish. We knew the move was coming from Jimmy Mullis. He wasn't going to sit around in P2 and remain loyal the entire time, Randy. Just a little bit late, I think, as they tried to fight off that outside line there. Mullis wasn't able to get, I think, as much as he would have liked.
I think you're right. I will say I'm even more surprised. You know that Jimmy Mullis maybe wouldn't have held strong on the bottom, but I'm still really shocked that some of those drivers that were towards the tail end of that lead pack were so patient and waited up as long as they did to get that outside line going. They needed to start that process 2 to 3 laps earlier than they did, and they just never got the numbers that they really needed to. There's only about 11 cars in that lead pack, and people were acting like as if that they jumped up top, they'd go all the way to the back of the field, as opposed to basically being able to keep potentially 2 evenly numbered sets of cars, maybe a set of 5 and a set of 6 side by side around this place.
Certainly, maybe a little bit of food for thought as we head into the opener in 1 week's time. And do have an opportunity to chat with one of our finishers this evening, standing by with the driver of the number one machine, Blake Reynolds, who has a pretty good pickup in all of this one. Ended up getting stuck 29th on the grid. It is a P5 finish, and we're trackside with him now. Blake, congratulations. A good result for you guys. I know you kind of come into this with not a ton of expectations, a little bit of practice before the main event next week, but tell us what you learned out there.
Well, we learned tonight that everyone's really close on pace. I noticed that just about every car was about the same pace. Even to qualifying, it was within just a couple tenths of each other. Also, everyone is just, it's so hot out here with the engine temps. I couldn't make any moves with my teammate Casey there just because the motor was so hot. I was 284 on the oil, and I just couldn't make any moves there at the end. I tried my best with the Cattell, but we couldn't really get anything done.
Obviously, this race, 50 laps in length, not going to be, total distance compared to the 100 laps that we see next week. But, what is the value of being able to practice with the 34 cars that we had out here tonight? You mentioned working with some buddies there, and certainly a lot of that testing goes on. And, 5-car groups, you get a bunch of guys together, but you're not going to get this level of caliber drivers, I think, together before the race. So you mentioned the engine temps. Is that kind of going to change your approach headed into next week as, now you kind of know what it's like out there in a big group?
Yeah, most likely. We'll probably make some set of adjustments for that. And I'm sure just running lower tape is probably the main thing. But this is really, like you said, this is the only practice we have with everybody together. It wasn't the full field, but we had a lot of cars, as you said. And before the next race next week, it's the first race. So, one practice, go into the race, and then, go to the race.
I know in the grand scheme of things, you look at Daytona and anything can happen on a plate track. So you look at the season opener and you go, well, it doesn't really matter. But of course, if you get a good finish next week, it's going to matter a great deal to get your 2019 kicked off on the right foot. But we appreciate you participating in this race, Blake. And also, thanks for stopping by and giving us some time. Good luck next Tuesday night, and we'll see what the number one machine's got.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That is your fifth place finisher this evening in the dash. Blake Reynolds started 29th, comes home in P5. Big thanks to him for joining us here on the pit lane. A lot of drivers headed back to debrief with their teammates. I did find it interesting that we saw quite a few number of drivers where only maybe one team member was available. Again, 6 drivers not able to make it for this race. We had 34 of our 40 here this evening. You can expect that grid to be absolutely packed next week when we go racing for the first of 18 races on 2019. But a good little teaser here tonight for this 2019 campaign, getting some testing out of the way, and we look forward to the season kickoff from Daytona, February the 12th, right back here 1 week time.
Yeah, and a couple of the teams not even having any of their drivers in attendance. No Bobby Zielinski or Jake Nichols from Joe Gibbs Racing. So interesting there for sure to see that neither of those drivers were in attendance. And don't think we had Ashton Crowder on track either. But actually, it did. Take that back. But he did not. He got caught up in something early. So most of the teams having at least one in attendance, only Gibbs being the only team to not have both their drivers compete tonight. But like you said, 1 week from today is when we kick everything off and drivers start chasing a $100,000 grand prize at the end of this year.
You're certainly going to want to be tuned in with us on a week-by-week basis as we head into 2019. That is it for us here tonight from Daytona International Speedway, but it gets real just around the corner. So on behalf of our entire team, for myself, Evan Pasoko, for Annie Cheneth, and our director, Hugo Louise, we want to thank you for tuning in. Congratulations to Taylor Hurst. He is your Dash winner, but it gets fun next Tuesday night, February the 12th. We officially go green flag racing in the 2019 eNASCAR PEAK Antifreeze iRacing Series. We'll see you then. It is a 9 o'clock Eastern start right here on RaceSpotTV and the iRacing Esports Network.